Beneath a violet dawn, the Candy Kingdom slept. Its towers shimmered with the glaze of morning dew, sugar crystals refracting the first light like a million dreaming eyes. The wind was gentle, a sigh that moved through frosting-coated streets and gumdrop gardens, whispering through the licorice gates. But no footsteps echoed. No laughter spilled across the bridges of caramel. In this world, Princess Bubblegum was never saved. And so, the kingdom slept forever. Pause. The story begins not with chaos, but with silence, the kind that stretches across time until even the concept of sound forgets itself. Somewhere, in the whispering woods beyond the kingdom walls, a boy named Finn dreamed restlessly. He tossed beneath his blanket of wolf furs, his sword hung beside the bed, untouched for what felt like years. He didn't know why his dreams felt so heavy. In each one, a pink light flickered at the edge of his memory. Something warm, something once important. But when he reached for it, it vanished. Jake would sometimes nudge him awake, telling him breakfast was ready, or that there was a cloud shaped like a sandwich floating by the window. They still laughed, they still went on adventures. But the air was thinner somehow, less bright, as though part of the world's heart had stopped beating. Without Bubblegum was not broken. It simply forgot how to glow. Pause. The Candy People still existed, but their kingdom had faded into mist, its walls eroded by time's sugary breath. Trees had grown over the ruins, wrapping the old candy towers in ivy and moss. Sometimes, when the wind passed through, the leaves made a faint, chiming sound, like distant bells calling out to a lost memory. Finn once asked Jake, "Hey, do you ever feel like there's supposed to be someone else?" Jake would stretch lazily, grin, and shrug. "Nah, man. It's just us, the way it's always been." But Finn knew deep down that always didn't feel quite right. There is a strange kind of magic in absence. When something is missing, the world rearranges itself to fill the void, or at least tries to. The grass grows a little taller, the stars burn a little dimmer. The heart learns to carry an ache it cannot name. So it was in this, a world subtly off balance, a chord half played. The Candy Kingdom's ruins had become a quiet sanctuary, a place where light filtered through broken sugar windows like holy water. Sometimes Finn would wander there alone, tracing his fingers over the crystallized walls, trying to remember why the scent of strawberries made him sad. He didn't know her name, the princess who once ruled these lands, but her presence lingered in every mote of pink dust. It was as if the world itself mourned her absence, though no one knew what had been lost. And yet, stories have a way of persisting even when memory has. Whispers of the sweet queen floated among the wind sprites and in the songs of the forest. Some said she was a goddess of logic and love. Others believed she was a figment of the moon's imagination, a dream that the night forgot to end. Finn didn't believe in myths, not really. But one evening, when the sun dipped below the horizon and the sky turned to liquid amethyst, he felt something stir, a pulse beneath the ruins, a soft vibration that seemed to hum through the air. It was a sound not of music, but of remembrance, a memory waking. He knelt beside a broken fountain where sugar water once flowed, and there, half buried beneath the vines, he found a piece of glass, smooth and round, reflecting the stars like a captured galaxy. He held it close, and for an instant a voice touched the edge of his mind. "Why didn't you come?" The voice was neither accusing nor kind. It was just tired. And with that, the world seemed to sigh. The air grew cooler, the trees leaned inward, and a faint pink glow rippled across the horizon. Jake found him standing there hours later, still holding the glass. Yo, dude, you okay? Finn nodded slowly. Yeah, just felt like someone was calling me. Jake raised a brow. Calling you? Like telemarketing calling or ghost calling? Finn smiled faintly. I don't know. Maybe both. They laughed, but Finn didn't let go of the glass. Days passed, but sleep no longer came easily. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw glimpses of another Ooo, one filled with light and music, where the Candy Kingdom shone like a jewel, and a girl with pink hair smiled at him from a balcony. She would wave, and then everything would melt away, as if the dream itself dissolved into sugar. He started visiting the ruins more often. Sometimes, when the moon was full, he would talk aloud to the empty air. He didn't know who he was talking to or why, but it felt right. One night, as he sat beside the fountain, the wind carried a scent, strawberries and rain. And in that scent was a memory not his own, a laboratory of glowing beakers, a mind that burned like fire, a heart that hid its tenderness behind equations and reason. He saw her, not as she was, but as she might have been, Princess Bubblegum, a being of intellect and compassion, born from sugar but shaped by science, who once ruled with both mercy and precision. And he saw her fall, not from battle or betrayal, but from absence. For in this world there was no Finn to save her, without him she had faced the Lich alone, and though she had fought valiantly, her brilliance was not enough to withstand pure entropy. Her kingdom froze in time, trapped between sweetness and decay, until it simply faded from existence. It was not destruction. It was forgetting, the cruelest death of all. Finn awoke from the vision trembling, his heart full of sorrow he couldn't explain. He whispered into the darkness, "I should have been there." But the wind only whispered back, "How could you, when this world never asked you to be?" In the Land of Ooo, destiny is not fixed. It bends, it reshapes, it echoes through timelines like ripples in a pond. Somewhere, in another reality, Finn had saved her, had stood between her and the end, had restored light to the kingdom. But in this thread of existence, the song had skipped a note, and yet, even here, the melody lingered. For love, even forgotten love, hums beneath the surface of every silent. Perhaps that was why Finn still dreamed of her. Perhaps that was why the glass in his hand pulsed faintly, as though trying to remember how to shine. As dawn crept across the horizon, Finn walked to the edge of the forest. The ruins glimmered faintly behind him, bathed in soft pink light. He looked back once, feeling an ache both strange and familiar. "Maybe I can still find her," he murmured. Jake tilted his head. "Find who?" Finn hesitated, then smiled faintly. "I don't know yet, but I think I'll know when I see her." And so they set off, not on a mission to save anyone, but on a journey to remember what had been forgotten. The road wound through quiet meadows, where the grass whispered in voices that weren't quite wind. The stars above blinked like sleepy eyes, watching two wanderers chase an echo of what could have been. Somewhere far ahead, the faint hum of the world grew louder, like a song trying to find its missing verse. Pause. The kingdom that never woke would remain in slumber for now. But in the heart of the boy who dreamed of pink light, something had stirred, and that small awakening, that quiet flicker of remembrance, would be enough to change everything. The forest was quiet that morning, painted in silver mist. Each leaf glistened with dew, each branch bowed low as though weighed by dreams. The path beneath Finn's boots was damp and soft, its soil breathing faintly like something alive. He held the small, round glass tightly in his hand, feeling it throb in rhythm with his own pulse. Jake trotted beside him, humming a wandering tune, something easy and round, like sunlight on slow-moving water. The sound seemed to make the mist swirl and dance, forming ghostly shapes that faded as soon as they appeared. For a long while, neither spoke. They simply walked, through soft valleys where candy-colored mushrooms bloomed, and across quiet rivers that reflected the sky like mirrors. Finn's thoughts drifted like the current beneath his feet. He kept thinking of the voice, the way it had asked him, "Why didn't you come?" Not with anger, but with sorrow so gentle it could break a heart. Sometimes, when he glanced at the glass, he thought he could see a faint shimmer deep within, as if a memory was trying to reach out through the surface, pressing its palms against the barrier between worlds. He wondered if memories could dream. By midday, the mists had thinned. They reached a clearing where sunlight filtered through the canopy in trembling shafts of gold. A ruined gazebo stood there, vines crawling up its marble legs, petals scattered across the stone floor like forgotten confetti. Finn stopped. Something about this place felt known. He turned the glass in his hand, and suddenly light flared across its surface. The world blurred. Jake's voice seemed to echo from far away. "Yo, Finn? You good?" But Finn was already falling inward. The vision came like a tide. He stood once more in the Candy Kingdom, only this time it was whole. The air sparkled with laughter, and the scent of caramel filled the streets. He saw candy citizens bustling happily, the glow of their faces bright beneath a sky of syrup-pink clouds. And there, at the balcony of a tall tower, stood Princess Bubblegum. Her eyes shone with determination and intelligence, but there was warmth there too, like sunlight through glass. She spoke to someone, a boy, tall and bright-eyed, wearing a white hat with little ears. Finn gasped softly. It was him, or a version of him that this world had once known. The princess smiled, touching his shoulder. Her lips moved, forming words he couldn't quite hear. Then her expression changed. Worry, resolve, a hint of fear. The sky darkened, shadows gathered, and the Lich's voice rumbled across the heavens. Finn watched helplessly as the other him drew his sword, as light burst from the tower, as time itself seemed to split. And then silence. The Candy Kingdom frozen in that final instant of defiance. The vision cracked apart like shattered sugar glass. Finn stumbled back into the clearing, gasping. The glass in his hand pulsed once, then dimmed. Jake caught him.
"Whoa, bro, what happened?"
Finn looked up at the sky, still seeing the image of that other world burning behind his eyes.
"I saw her," he whispered. "I saw Bubblegum," Jake blinked.
Bubblegum? That's a weird name for a person. Finn smiled faintly. Yeah, but she was real once.
"Maybe she still is."
Somewhere. He looked down at the glass again. It was cool now, smooth and silent. But he could still feel something alive within, a heartbeat caught between worlds. Pause. That night, they camped beneath a hollow tree whose roots glowed faintly from within, like veins filled with moonlight. The forest around them hummed softly, as though aware of their dreaming. Finn turned the glass in his hands, whispering to it. "What are you trying to show me?" He expected silence, but instead came a whisper, faint as the wind moving through sugar leaves. "Remember me?" The words echoed through his chest. It wasn't just a voice anymore. It was a plea. Dreams that night came slowly, heavy as honey. He saw the princess again, this time in her lab, surrounded by bubbling flasks and glowing equations that floated in mid-air. She was trying to build something, though he couldn't tell what. A machine of light and memory, powered by fragments of her own mind. She whispered to herself as she worked, her voice calm but tinged with sadness. If I fail, they will forget, but if I succeed,
I might still reach them. The dream flickered, shifting. Her hands trembling, the machine sparking, a surge of pink light swallowing everything.
And then Finn awoke, the word remember still ringing in his ears. Jake was already up, frying something that looked suspiciously like eggs made of jelly beans. "Morning, dude," Jake said cheerfully.
You look like you wrestled a ghost in your sleep. Finn rubbed his eyes. Maybe I did. He held up the glass. Jake, I think someone's trapped in here. Jake squinted. Like a genie thing? Not exactly, more like a memory trying to stay alive, Jake chewed thoughtfully. That's heavy, bro. What are you gonna do?
Finn looked toward the horizon where the forest thinned into pale hills.
I think I need to go where she vanished.
Maybe there's still something left there. Jake sighed and stretched, his limbs growing long and lazy.
Adventure time again, huh?
Finn smiled softly.
Not adventure, just remembering time. They walked for days.
The landscape changed gradually, from forest to plain, from plain to the soft, desolate glow of what once was a kingdom. The air grew sweet again, tinged with the faint scent of strawberries and static. And then, at last, they reached it, the heart of the Candy Kingdom. What remained was little more than a scar, a hollow circle where color refused to return. The ground shimmered faintly like melted glass. Finn stepped into it, holding the orb high. The light inside flickered weakly at first, then flared bright. The world around them shifted. The ruins hummed. For a brief, trembling moment, he could see outlines of what once was towers, bridges, laughter, and above it all the pink glow of the princess's lab. He felt her presence then, more real than ever. "You shouldn't have come here," her voice murmured, soft and distant. Finn's heart stuttered. "Why not?" "Because this is the place that forgot me. And if you stay too long, it might forget you too." The words trembled through him. The glass vibrated violently, but he didn't let go. "Then I'll remember for both of us." Pause. The world responded. The ruins pulsed with pink light, and for the first time in this forgotten Ooo, the sky began to shift. Color seeped back into the clouds, faint but steady. Jake covered his eyes.
Whoa, you're doing something wild, man.
Finn closed his eyes, focusing on the rhythm of the heartbeat inside the glass. He could feel her. Lost between timelines, her consciousness scattered like starlight through sugar dust. She whispered again, "I was built to endure." But even science cannot fight being forgotten.
Help me find the rest of me. The light faded.
The air grew still. The ruins returned to silence. When Finn opened his eyes, the glass was cracked, not broken, but lined with a thin fracture like a scar. Inside, the pink glow still pulsed faintly. Jake touched his shoulder. "You okay, dude?" Finn nodded.
Yeah, I think I know what I have to do. Jake tilted his head.
"Let me guess. Find the other pieces?" Finn smiled. "Exactly. Every memory leaves a trace. If I can find them all, maybe I can bring her back. Not just for her, but for this world too." Jake grinned. "Then let's go collect some cosmic candy shards, bro." They both laughed, the kind of soft laughter that pushes back the edge of silence. As night fell once more, they sat beside the cracked glass orb. The stars overhead shimmered faintly pink, as if touched by her light. Finn spoke quietly, his voice drifting with the wind.
Hey, bubblegum. If you can hear me, I'll find you.
"I promise." The orb warmed in his hands, glowing just enough to light his face. The forest around them sighed, a sound halfway between relief and hope. And though sleep came slowly, it was peaceful. For somewhere, deep within the realm of forgotten dreams, a fragment of the princess stirred, drawn to the sound of a promise made under the candy-pink stars. Pause. The glass would guide him now. and the journey to rebuild what had been lost had begun. The road led them north, into a land where memory thickened like mist. The air here smelled faintly of old rain and paper, the scent of stories too tired to be told again. Trees loomed tall and ancient, their bark carved with symbols that once might have been names, but now were only the ghosts of letters. Finn walked slowly, each step sinking slightly into the mossy earth. The cracked glass orb hung from a cord around his neck, pulsing faintly in time with the rhythm of his breath. Jake padded beside him, unusually quiet. His eyes darted around the forest, as if watching something unseen but felt. An invisible crowd of forgotten things, Somewhere in the distance, wind chimes tinkled, but there was no wind. Finn stopped and touched one of the trees. Its surface was rough, etched with grooves that hummed faintly when his fingers brushed them. Jake tilted his head. "What's that sound?" Finn closed his eyes.
It's like whispering.
Like the trees are trying to talk. He pressed his ear to the trunk. At first there was only silence, the deep, endless quiet of ancient wood. Then, faintly, he heard it, a name, not spoken but remembered.
A single word breathed into the fibers of the tree. Bonnie! Finn's heart trembled.
The orb against his chest flared gently, glowing through the fabric of his tunic. Jake frowned. "Who's Bonnie?"
Finn whispered. Her name.
Princess Bubblegum. Her real name was Bonnie. And as he spoke it aloud, the forest reacted. The air shifted. 1,000 trees seemed to stir at once, their branches creaking as though waking from long sleep. The whispers grew louder, overlapping, a sea of half-remembered syllables. Jake took a step back. "Okay, that's new."
Kinda creepy, dude. Finn didn't move.
He felt a pull, gentle but firm, drawing him deeper into the forest. The orb's light grew brighter, flickering like a heartbeat trying to steady itself. They followed the sound of names until they reached a clearing. At its center stood a single, massive tree, its trunk so wide that 20 people could not have circled it hand in hand. Its bark shimmered faintly pink beneath the grey sky. This was no ordinary tree. This was a tree of memory, where forgotten souls, lost words, and erased moments were absorbed into its roots to keep the world from fracturing under the weight of what was lost. Finn approached slowly. The air vibrated around him. He could feel his thoughts slowing, softening, as if the forest were reading them. He placed a hand on the trunk, and then a voice, quiet and steady. "You shouldn't have come here." Finn froze. It was her voice again. "Bubblegum," he whispered. "I had to." "I'm trying to find you," the voice sighed, gentle as falling leaves. "You already have, in a way. This place, it's where I exist now."
What's left of me, anyway? Jake's eyes widened.
"Whoa, she's like tree spirit Bubblegum now?" The voice smiled faintly through the air. "Not spirit, memory. The forest keeps what the world forgets. But memories fade even here. That's why you're hearing so many names. They're trying to hold on to themselves." Finn pressed his palm harder against the bark. "Then tell me what to do."
How do I bring you back?
The forest fell silent for a moment. Even the whispering stopped. Then came her reply, low and thoughtful. "To remember something is to give it shape, but to restore it, you must remember it truly, not as it was, but as it was meant to be." Finn frowned. "What does that mean?" "Find the others who remember me," she said.
Even if they don't know they do.
"Fragments of me still linger in their dreams, their laughter, their inventions. Gather those memories, and you might weave me back into the world." The orb glowed brighter, as though agreeing. Jake scratched his head. "So we're like—"
On a memory scavenger hunt.
Finn smiled softly. "Yeah, but not for treasure, for someone's soul." Pause. The tree rustled, almost like a sigh of gratitude. "Be careful," she said. "The Lich's shadow still stirs in forgotten places."
It feeds on what we leave behind. Her voice faded into the rustling leaves.
Finn stepped back, gazing up at the immense branches stretching toward the dim sky. For a moment he thought he saw her face formed by the pattern of the leaves, soft eyes, sad smile, watching him. Then it was gone. As evening fell, the forest grew darker, but it did not feel threatening. It felt heavy, yes, full of unspoken words but also alive, aware, and oddly compassionate. The air shimmered with memory. They set up camp beneath the great tree's roots. Jake started a small fire from glowing mushrooms, their blue light soft and steady. Finn sat quietly, staring at the orb. "You know," he said, "it's weird.
I barely knew her, but it feels like I've known her forever." Jake stretched lazily, yawning.
Maybe you did. Or maybe part of you still remembers from that other world." Finn poked at the fire.
Do you ever think we live more than once?
Like maybe there are other versions of us out there, living the lives we didn't? Jake grinned. "Yeah, dude. I probably run a breakfast joint in one of them." "Jake's pancake dimension." Finn laughed quietly.
And maybe in another I actually saved her. The laughter faded into a calm silence.
The forest hummed softly around them, like a lullaby made of names. Finn closed his eyes and whispered her true name once more. "Bonnie," the forest echoed it back, thousands of leaves murmuring in unison. "Bonnie."
Bonnie, Bonnie.
It was both beautiful and haunting. And then the whisper shifted, deepened, into another voice entirely. A cold, rasping tone that cut through the warmth.
So the hero remembers. Finn's eyes flew open.
The fire dimmed. The orb at his chest pulsed violently. Jake jumped to his feet.
Yo, who said that?
The shadows between the trees moved, not like living creatures, more like the forest itself was being drained of color. A chill swept through the clearing. The whispers of names twisted into screams. Finn stood, sword half drawn. "Lich," he breathed. The voice laughed softly. "Even in worlds where I am forgotten, I remain. You seek to restore what was erased, but every memory reborn feeds me."
I am what grows from what you leave behind. The ground trembled.
Roots cracked, groaning. Finn gritted his teeth.
I don't care. I'll remember anyway, Jake growled, stretching into a shield around him. You want him? You go through me. Bone breath! The Lich's laughter faded, echoing deep into the woods, until all that remained was silence again. Finn's hands shook slightly as he sheathed his sword.
Jake looked around nervously. "Man!"
This is getting freaky, Finn nodded.
"Yeah, but it means we're getting close. He wouldn't show up unless he was scared." The orb's light steadied, warm against his skin. They didn't sleep much that night. But when Finn finally drifted off, the forest gave him a dream, not frightening, but soft, like a memory gently laid in his hands. He saw Bubblegum again, not as a queen or scientist, but as a child made of sugar and light, building her first experiment out of candy sticks and hope. She smiled as she worked, her eyes wide with curiosity. A voice, older, wiser, and yet unmistakably her own, whispered, "I built everything to last. But I never thought I could fade too." Finn reached out, but the dream dissolved into mist. He woke with tears in his eyes. Jake was already packing. "Morning, dreamer. Where to next?" Finn wiped his eyes and looked at the forest. The great tree now stood silent and still, its bark faintly glowing with her name, Bonnie, carved in soft pink light. He touched the trunk one last time. "Thank you," he whispered. The tree's leaves rustled like a farewell kiss. As they left the forest, Finn glanced back once more. Behind him, the whispers resumed. Names, stories, fragments of forgotten worlds. But among them he heard one clear voice, hers, saying softly, "Keep going, Finn." He smiled, tightening the strap that held the cracked orb close to his heart. The path ahead was still long, but the forest had given him what he needed: a name, a purpose, and a promise. The world outside the forest felt different now. The sky was clearer, as though each step toward remembrance brightened the horizon, and somewhere, faint but certain, the hum of the universe carried her name still. Not as a whisper this time, but as a song. The night draped itself across the Candy Kingdom like a silken veil, cool and endless. Pause. The sugar towers gleamed with a faint luminescence, their frosting roofs reflecting the stars that trembled far above. Yet there was a stillness here, an unnatural calm. The air smelled of vanilla and rain, and the streets were quiet as though time itself had paused to hold its breath. In this quiet kingdom, the wind carried whispers of a story that never happened. The celebration that should have been, the laughter, the song, the bright light of the princess's return, was missing. There were no banners fluttering, no cheers echoing off candy walls.
Instead, the citizens moved slowly, dreamlike, as if caught between wakefulness and slumber. Bubblegum, the ruler who once dreamed of order and perfection, had never been saved.
Her tower, standing tall on the horizon, pulsed faintly with pink light, but no figure stood within its windows. The halls of her lab were empty, the cauldrons still, the blueprints untouched. The kingdom continued without her guidance, an echo sustained by routine, not by will. And Finn, somewhere beyond the gates, he walked through the forest of his own wondering. Pause. He sometimes thought he could see the glow of the castle far off, a beacon of something unfinished. Yet, every time he approached, he found only mist, as if the Candy Kingdom had become a mirage born of memory. There is a strange thing that happens when destiny is interrupted. The world doesn't stop, it simply bends. It shifts to accommodate the absence, stretching reality into new shapes. The kingdom that never woke was one such shape, a dream still happening without its dreamer. The gumdrop guards still patrolled, their movements slow and rhythmic. The royal bakers still stirred empty bowls, their spoons clinking faintly in the quiet. The lights in the candy towers flickered on each night, but no one remembered why. Purpose had thinned into habit, and habit had turned into a strange, sugar-scented eternity. Some nights, Peppermint Butler would climb to the top of the parapet and stare at the stars. He would whisper spells to no one, incantations meant to hold the delicate web of things together. "She will return," he would murmur, though the words tasted less like hope and more like ritual. In his mind, he could still see Finn's face, the bright eyes of the boy who was meant to save everything. But in this world, Finn had chosen a different path. He had not stormed the tower. He had not broken the door. He had not offered his hand. And so the kingdom slept. Pause. Yet even within sleep, dreams continued to bloom. Deep inside the candy streets, the citizens began to hum to themselves. It started as a soft vibration, the way air hums before a storm. The hum grew stronger each passing night, until it filled the streets with resonance. Though they did not understand why, the candy people began to gather. Their hums intertwined into a single tone, a tonal echo of longing, reaching for something forgotten. It is said that when a dream is shared by enough souls, the world listens. And on one moonless night, the stars above the kingdom quivered. A pulse of energy swept through the frosting towers, and for the first time in what felt like centuries, the great heart of the kingdom began to beat again. The glow within Bubblegum's tower intensified. Her form began to coalesce, not in body, but in essence. She was no longer the scientist princess bound by duty and logic. She had become a spirit of possibility, the embodiment of what might have been. The people felt her presence not as sight but as warmth. A motherly calm filled the air. The streets shimmered with soft pink light, as though love itself had returned to the sugar. Pause. But the bubble gum that never was looked out over her silent kingdom and saw a truth too vast for words. She had not been saved, but perhaps she had never needed saving. The kingdom had learned to exist without commands, to hum its own rhythm, to build its own meaning. And Finn, somewhere in his wandering heart, had helped birth this quiet peace by his absence. What then is salvation? Is it the act of rescuing another, or the space left behind when we choose not to interfere? Finn would one day dream of this place again. He would wake in the middle of the night, feeling as though he had just been there, a kingdom bathed in starlight, humming softly, at peace. And though he could not recall it clearly, he would smile. Somewhere, deep within his chest, the melody would linger. The kingdom that never woke did not need to. It had become something new, a dream of stillness, a sanctuary beyond endings and beginnings. And so the night continued. The stars turned like sugar crystals in the sky, and the hum of the kingdom spread into the distance, across forests, mountains, and even into the hearts of those who had forgotten how to dream. Pause. For in every choice left unmade, in every rescue left undone, the world spins quietly on, rewriting itself in ways both strange and beautiful. Tomorrow, Finn would begin to remember. He would hear the hum, and the path to the next dream would begin to unfold. The forest had grown thick around Finn's wandering path. The moss clung to his boots, the trees swayed with the slow rhythm of unseen winds, and above it all, a sky of deep indigo breathed with quiet stars. Oars. Somewhere far off, faint and elusive, a sound began to stir. A hum he did not understand. It was not music, not yet. It was like the echo of a dream he had almost forgotten. It came and went between the leaves, carried on the sigh of the wind and the hush of distant rain. When Finn closed his eyes, the sound seemed to live inside his chest, pulsing softly where his heart should be. He walked for hours, following it. The world around him shimmered in shades of silver and blue, like a place halfway between waking and sleep. The grass whispered against his legs, and sometimes he thought he heard voices, gentle, patient, waiting. The sound led him deeper, until he reached a clearing where the moonlight fell like milk over still water. There, reflected in the lake, he saw two worlds at once, the forest above, and something beneath, a city of sugar and light humming faintly in pink tones, the candy kingdom that never was. Oars. Finn knelt by the lake's edge. The hum grew stronger, layering upon itself until it became melody. It was the kingdom's song, the one the citizens had begun to hum in their endless slumber. Yet now it was alive, rising and falling in waves, like the tide of some cosmic sea. He did not understand its words, but he understood its meaning, forgiveness. In this world, there were no wars, no victories, no rescues, only continuance. The kingdom that never woke had become a living hymn to peace, a peace born not of triumph, but of surrender. Finn listened, and something within him began to unravel. All his life he had believed in saving things, people, worlds, moments. But this song showed him a truth he had never faced, that some worlds save themselves gently, quietly, through time. Pause. He lay down by the lakeside and watched the stars ripple across the surface. His reflection merged with the one below. For a moment, he saw himself standing inside that mirrored kingdom, walking beside Peppermint Butler as the candy people hummed their song. He was not their hero, he was their witness. It is a strange thing to be the echo instead of the voice, yet in that strangeness there is peace. Perhaps, he thought, there are two kinds of destiny, the kind you chase and the kind that finds you when you stop running. The forest listened. The water glowed. The hum deepened until it became silence again, the kind of silence that carries meaning. Pause. Finn closed his eyes. Within that quiet, he felt the gentle touch of something vast and kind, a presence like bubblegums, but softer, almost divine. It was the spirit of the kingdom itself, speaking without words. It told him, "You did not fail. You simply let things be." He wept softly, not from sadness, but from the beauty of it. The idea that maybe not saving her was, in some unseen way, another kind of salvation. The stars above dimmed. The world blurred at its edges, folding into dream. As sleep took him, the hum began again, faint but clear, threading through the leaves and across the surface of the lake. It would travel far that night, this song beneath the silence. It would drift to the edges of Ooo, to the ruins of forgotten temples, to the sleeping hearts of distant heroes. Each would hear it in their own way, a lullaby of what might have been and what still could be. Pause, for some truths are too gentle to be spoken aloud. They can only be sung by the world itself, beneath the noise of everything else. And as Finn slept, the world sang on. The dawn came softly, washing the forest in pale gold. Mist lingered like the breath of old dreams, curling around the trunks of trees that seemed to hum faintly with memory. Pause. When Finn awoke, he found himself surrounded not by silence, but by the murmuring of leaves. It was as if the forest itself was whispering his name. He sat up slowly, brushing dew from his hair. The lake was still there beside him, serene and luminous, though the image beneath, the reflection of the Candy Kingdom, had faded. Only ripples remained, spreading out in perfect circles, as if carrying the memory of the night's song to distant shores. Finn felt something stir in the air, a presence, not seen but known. The forest, he realized, remembered him, not just as a wanderer but as a thread in its great, endless story. The trees here were ancient, their bark lined with faces of time, patterns that resembled eyes.
Hands, echoes of souls that had once rested beneath their boughs.
As Finn walked, the forest seemed to respond. Branches swayed to part his path, roots shifted to guide his step. He no longer felt like an intruder. He felt like a returning thought. Pause. In the heart of the forest he found a clearing filled with glowing spores drifting like slow snow. Their scent was sweet, honey and pine, and the air itself seemed to pulse with a soft rhythm, the heartbeat of the earth. He knelt and touched the moss, and the world around him began to shimmer. From within the soil rose visions, transparent and dreamlike. He saw moments from his life, not as memories, but as echoes.
Him and Jake laughing beneath the stars.
Princess Bubblegum smiling in a lab filled with colour. The fall of ice, the ring of sword and shield, all of it flickering in gentle succession, like a story told to the trees. But as the visions faded, something new appeared, a version of himself he did not recognize. A quieter Finn, one who had never saved Bubblegum, never fought, never broken his own heart for the sake of heroism. This other Finn sat cross-legged among the trees, eyes closed, breathing slowly as though meditating. He looked content, whole. Finn approached the vision, and the forest seemed to still. The birds quieted, the leaves froze mid-rustle. He stared at his mirrored self and wondered which of them had chosen the better path. Had this Finn lived a smaller life, or a wiser one? He remembered what the kingdom spirit had told him. You did not fail. You simply let things be. The words echoed again in his chest. He felt them settle deep in his bones like roots taking hold. Perhaps the world did not need heroes in every story. Perhaps some tales were meant to unfold without interference, like trees growing towards sunlight, each at their own pace. The forest began to sing. It wasn't a melody this time, but a deep,
resonant hum, a living vibration that filled the ground beneath his feet and the air around his heart.
Every leaf trembled with it, every stone seemed to pulse with unseen light. He realized then that the song beneath the silence had not left him. It had simply changed its form. It had become the voice of the forest, Oz, and as he listened, Finn understood something that words could never explain. The world was not a collection of separate places or moments. It was one living thing, a breathing, dreaming organism. The Candy Kingdom, the lake, the forest, even himself. They were all notes in the same vast song. In that moment, he felt his loneliness dissolve. The ache that had followed him through endless nights lifted like morning mist. For he was not alone. He had never been. He closed his eyes and placed his hand against a tree's trunk. It felt warm. Beneath the bark, he could sense the pulse of sap, the rhythm of quiet endurance, and the forest whispered back to him, not in language, but in feeling. Gratitude, memory, love. Pause. He understood then that the forest did not just remember him. It remembered all who had ever touched it. Their laughter, their sorrow, their breath. Every story, every choice, every silence was woven into its being. He stayed there for a long time, breathing with the forest, feeling its rhythm align with his own heartbeat. When he finally stood, the light had changed. The sun had dipped low, painting everything in amber and shadow. As he walked onward, the trees parted one last time to let him pass. Behind him, the forest exhaled, releasing a cascade of glowing spores that drifted upward like tiny lanterns. The path ahead was uncertain, but Finn no longer feared uncertainty. Somewhere, far beyond the trees, he sensed that something awaited him. A truth, a face, perhaps a song, yet unfinished. He smiled softly, adjusting his pack. The hum of the world followed him as he disappeared into the golden dusk. Or's every step forward was a memory.
Every breath a continuation.
The forest that remembered him would hold his story forever, whether he saved anyone or not. And so the boy walked on, quietly, peacefully, into the next dream. The night returned like a sigh, gentle and inevitable. The stars spread wide over the horizon, their cold fires flickering in pools of blue and silver. Finn sat beside a fallen log at the forest's edge, watching as the moonlight folded across the land. Pause. He had walked for what felt like days, though time now moved differently, like breath, expanding and contracting between moments. He felt as though he had stepped out of the world he once knew and into something deeper, slower, a place not of events but of meanings. And within this quietness, a dream was waiting. He could feel it calling, a pulse beyond thought, something patient and aware. It hovered at the boundary of waking, like a memory just out of reach. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying faint echoes of the hum that had followed him since the Candy Kingdom. Yet tonight the sound was softer. It was not urging him forward, but inward. Finn closed his eyes, the world around him fell away, and he found himself standing within a vast field of light. It was neither day nor night here, an eternal twilight that shimmered between gold and violet. Above the sky rippled like water. Below the earth glowed faintly with veins of silver. And at the horizon he saw her, Princess Bubblegum. Or rather, the idea of her. She was not flesh and blood, not the logical, brilliant ruler he remembered, but a figure woven of light and thought. Her form flickered between shapes, the scientist, the queen, the girl with pink hair who once smiled beside a campfire. She stood still, waiting, her eyes gentle and knowing. Pause. Finn took a step forward. "Is this real?" he asked, though the words sounded small here, fragile in the vastness of this dream. Her voice came not from her lips, but from everywhere around him, a resonance within the light itself. What is real if not the dreams that guide us? Her tone was calm, neither sorrowful nor joyous. "You wonder what might have happened if you had saved me," she said softly.
"But tell me, Finn, do you believe I was ever truly lost?"
He hesitated.
I thought heroes were supposed to save people, and perhaps they are," she replied.
"But sometimes people do not need saving. Sometimes they need space to become who they are." Her form flickered again, and now she appeared as the scientist, holding a beaker filled with starlight. "Had you come for me that day," she said, "the kingdom would have returned to life, but it would not have learned how to dream. My people would have depended on my order, my rules. But in my absence they discovered harmony of their own. You gave them that gift even without knowing." Finn lowered his gaze. "So,
"By not saving you, I saved something else." "Yes," she whispered.
the world does not always ask for rescue. Sometimes it asks for trust." Pause. The field around them began to shift. Petals of light drifted through the air, each one humming faintly like a note from a lullaby. Finn reached out to touch one, and as it brushed his hand, he saw flashes, Peppermint Butler gazing at the stars, candy citizens humming in unison, the pulse of the sleeping kingdom reborn in peace. Every note, every hum, every gentle act had become part of something vast and self-sustaining. He turned back to Bubblegum's light and asked, "And what about me? What happens to me in this world where I never saved you?" Her smile was soft and infinite. "You learn to rest." Pause. The words struck him deeper than any sword or prophecy ever had. Rest. A simple word, yet in it lay an entire philosophy. The idea that being at peace could be as heroic as fighting, that stillness could be strength, that to stop running was not to give up, but to arrive. The dream pulsed brighter. Finn felt warmth spreading through him, the same warmth he had felt in the forest, in the hum, in every quiet moment he had once ignored. Bubblegum's figure began to fade into light. "You were always searching for what it means to be good," she said, her voice now distant and tender. "But goodness, Finn, is not something you do, it's something you listen to. It's already there like music beneath the silence." The words melted into the air, and then she was gone. Pause. Finn stood alone in the luminous field, though he no longer felt alone. The dream began to unravel around him, dissolving into motes of soft color that drifted upward like rising stars. As he opened his eyes, he found himself once more at the edge of the forest, dawn just beginning to break. The world was quiet, yet full of life. The first birds were singing, and the horizon glowed with the gold of a new morning. The dream had ended, but something of it had stayed behind. He could still feel the hum beneath everything, the steady, gentle rhythm of existence continuing, unbroken, unhurried. The song beneath the silence, the pulse of the kingdom, the breath of the trees. It was all one. Finn smiled faintly. For the first time, he did not feel the need to act, to fix, to fight. He simply breathed, letting the world move as it wished. And somewhere deep within the heart of Ooo, the dream that had waited for morning finally opened its eyes. The sun rose slowly over the forest, spilling golden light through the leaves like honey poured over ancient bark. The mist that had lingered through the night began to lift, curling and fading until only ribbons of pale vapor drifted across the mossy ground. Pause. Finn walked through that golden quiet, feeling each ray of sunlight as though it carried a secret warmth, something familiar, something remembered. For the first time in what felt like forever, the world seemed awake. Birds sang lazily in the canopy, their voices weaving with the hum that still lingered in the air. Finn's thoughts moved like soft ripples, no longer sharp with questions, but wide, slow, and curious. He followed the sound of the wind as it threaded through the trees, until he came upon a clearing bathed in morning light. The air here shimmered faintly, as though time itself had thinned. The grass glowed with dew, and in the center of the clearing stood a single tree, short, wide,
and full of life. And beneath it sat Jake. Pause. Finn froze. The old shape of him, familiar and beloved, was sitting cross-legged in the grass, tail flicking lazily, eyes half closed.
He looked peaceful, radiant even, like sunlight given form. There was no sense of surprise in his presence. It felt as though Jake had been waiting all along, in the very space between one breath and the next. "Yo," Jake said softly, not opening his eyes.
"Took you long enough, bro." Finn laughed before he could stop himself.
It burst out of him like wind through leaves, a sound he hadn't made in what felt like ages. "Jake," he whispered, his voice trembling.
You're here." Jake opened one golden eye, smiling with that lazy grin that could dissolve a mountain's weight.
"Yeah, man.
"I never really went anywhere."
You just had to slow down enough to see me." Pause. The two of them sat together for a while, saying nothing. The sunlight moved across their faces, and the forest swayed with the rhythm of their silence. Finn watched as tiny motes of dust glowed like miniature suns in the air, turning the clearing into a living dream. "I thought I lost you," Finn said eventually, his voice almost a whisper. Jake shrugged. "Nah, you can't lose what's part of you. You just forget to look in the right direction sometimes." Finn lowered his head. "I've been walking so long, Jake, trying to understand what everything means. Why things happen the way they did." Jake chuckled softly. "Buddy, that's what you do. You go deep. You search. But what meaning ain't always hiding under the next rock. Sometimes it's just sitting right next to you having a good nap." Finn smiled faintly, shaking his head. "You always made it sound simple, 'cause it is," Jake said. "You think too much about what could have been. But what's wrong with what is?" Pause. Finn looked at him closely then. Jake's form seemed to shimmer slightly. Not unreal, but not entirely of the world either. The edges of him glowed faintly like light seen through water. "Are you real?" Finn asked quietly. Jake laughed. "Define real, man. I'm here, right? You can hear me, feel me."
"That's real enough." Finn nodded slowly, the truth of it settling deep inside him.
Jake's presence wasn't about body or time. It was about connection, about memory that refused to fade. He wasn't seeing a ghost. He was remembering what love looks like when it refuses to die. The breeze shifted, carrying the scent of pine and sugar. Somewhere in the distance, Finn thought he heard the faint hum of the Candy Kingdom's song again. Jake tilted his head, listening. "You hear that?" Jake asked softly. "Yeah," Finn said. "It's been following me."
"Ever since I didn't save her?" Jake stretched, his limbs elongating lazily like warm taffy. "Yeah, I figured that's what this trip was about."
"You trying to make sense of it all?"
"Thing is, bro, you did save her. Just not the way you expected," Finn frowned. "How?"
Jake leaned back, hands behind his head, looking up at the sunlight streaming through the leaves. "By letting go." Sometimes when you step back, things heal on their own. You gave the world room to breathe. Pause. The words hung there, simple yet vast. Finn thought about the sleeping kingdom, about Bubblegum's voice in the dream, about the forest that remembered him. Every place he had passed through had been alive, alive because he had chosen not to force it into a story of rescue. He realized then that maybe the world didn't need to be fixed.
Maybe it just needed to be listened to. Jake looked at him and grinned.
Man, you've always carried so much weight on those skinny shoulders. Maybe now you can chill. Finn laughed, tears in his eyes.
You sound like always, Jake. That's 'cause I am always, Jake said, voice soft but steady. I'm every laugh we ever had.
Every dumb adventure.
Every time we fell and got up again. I'm baked into your story, bro.
You can't separate us even if you tried. Pause. The wind picked up and sunlight broke through the canopy in wide, glowing beams. The clearing seemed to fill with warmth, a gentle radiance that touched every leaf and blade of grass. The shadows shifted, and when Finn looked again, Jake was standing. His form had grown brighter, his edges fading into golden haze. Wait, Finn said, standing too.
Are you leaving again?
Jake smiled that same calm smile.
Nah, man, I'm just changing shape.
You'll still find me in the laughter, in the quiet, in every place the sun touches.
I'll be there. Finn swallowed hard. I don't want you to go. Jake's eyes softened.
Then don't see it like that. Think of it like the end of a song. It doesn't stop existing just 'cause it's over.
It echoes, right?
Inside you. That's me, buddy. The echo. Pause. They stood in silence. The forest was alive with light, and the hum had returned, rising in harmony with the wind. Finn closed his eyes and listened. The sound carried both sorrow and joy, past and present, the memory of everything they'd been. When he opened his eyes again, Jake was gone. Only sunlight remained, warm and golden, painting the clearing in peace. Finn didn't cry. He didn't need to. The ache that had once been unbearable was now soft, filled with gratitude. He sat back down under the tree where Jake had been, resting his back against the trunk. He could feel the warmth in the bark, as if Jake's laughter still lived there. The hum flowed through him, and for the first time it didn't feel like something distant. It was inside him, woven into his breath, his heartbeat, his being. He whispered, "Thanks, Jake." The leaves above rustled in reply. Pause. The days stretched on, golden and slow. The forest shimmered with small sounds, flies buzzing, branches creaking, the hum of unseen rivers. Finn stayed there until the light began to fade, and as dusk approached, he noticed that the sunlight no longer cast a single shadow. Beside his own, faint and shifting, was another. Jake's shadow, lean and crooked, stretching alongside his like an echo of what once was and what always would be. Finn smiled. "Guess you're still hanging around." The shadow flickered playfully as if winking. Then the sun dipped below the horizon and the world turned to amber and blue. The hum softened, folding back into the rhythm of night. Finn stood and began to walk again, feeling the warmth still glowing within him. Every step felt lighter now, as though the weight of his long journey had dissolved into sunlight. And even as the night deepened, he could still see the faint golden outline of Jake's shadow moving beside him. Unhurried, eternal, I pause. There are companions who walk beside us in body, and companions who walk beside us in spirit. One day we realize there is no difference. The love remains, even when the form changes. The laughter, the warmth, the small moments of stillness, they become light, and the light becomes everything. As Finn left the clearing behind, he looked up at the sky. The first stars had appeared, and among them, one burned brighter than the rest, a golden flicker, faint but steadfast. He didn't need to ask who it was. He just smiled, whispering softly into the wind, "Good night, bro." The breeze carried his words into the stars, and somewhere beyond time and dream, Jake laughed, warm, easy, and full of sunlight. The dawn broke in muted tones, like the slow unraveling of a dream. Pale gold stretched across the horizon, but it was not bright. It was tender, hesitant, as though the sun itself was unsure whether to rise over this version of the world. Finn walked along the ridges of soft green hills, where dew still clung to the grass, like tiny lanterns. In the silence, his footsteps made the gentlest rhythm, a heartbeat beneath the sky. Pause. He had begun to hum, not out of joy nor sorrow, but something deeper, a kind of remembering. The hum became a low song, half forgotten, a melody from the old days when the world still felt like a promise. There was something strange about that melody. It wasn't his own, and yet it moved through him with the intimacy of breath. It wound around his heart like an old friend's laughter, like Jake's quiet hums beside a campfire, or Princess Bubblegum's absent-minded tapping on her instruments while working through the night. But now, that song seemed to echo from somewhere else entirely, from the space between worlds, from a place where things never happened, but still mattered. He stopped walking and looked up. The air shimmered faintly, and he could feel time folding in on itself, whispering, "Pause. What if songs had memories of their own? What if they waited in the empty spaces of reality, waiting for someone to remember them into being?" He closed his eyes. In that darkness, he could feel the threads of melody weaving, soft, delicate, ancient. It was the song that never was, the one that should have been sung when Finn first saved Bubblegum, the one that marked a destiny completed, a story made whole. But that moment had never come to pass, and so the song lingered in the void of might-have-beens, waiting for a world that had never been born. He remembered the old stories the cosmic owl once told him, that every act of heroism sends ripples through the dreaming sea. That for every ripple there is an echo, a mirror wave in another realm, one where the hero faltered, one where the kiss was never given, one where the monster was never slain. Finn began to realize that his world, this soft, endless twilight, was one such echo. He was walking through a reflection of Oo's sighs, its regrets, its unsung songs. The wind stirred gently, carrying with it faint voices, versions of himself.
A boy who never picked up a sword, a hero who wandered too far.
A friend who never found the courage to speak his heart. Each voice sang differently, but together they wove a harmony that trembled on the edge of existence. He listened closely. Each voice felt like a lifetime, full of choices he never made. He could hear one Finn who chose peace and lived quietly in a cottage beside the forest, another who sailed the endless seas chasing stars, and one who stayed by Bubblegum's side, old and tired, building something together that might have been love. All of them were real in their own small ways. All of them were him. It made him wonder, was reality the story we lived or the stories we dreamed but never reached? Perhaps they were both the same. Perhaps what mattered was not the tale itself, but the echo it left behind, the song that never was, still softly singing. As Finn walked, the landscape began to change. The grass turned silver. The sky rippled with faint color, like oil upon water. He was nearing the heart of this dream world, the place where stories met their reflections. He could sense it calling to him, not in words, but in rhythm, a pulse like the beating of the world's own heart. There he found a strange clearing. In its center lay a crystal lake, perfectly still like a mirror made of memory. When he looked into it, he saw not his own reflection, but dozens of them, each version of Finn, each shaped by a different path, some smiling, some weary, some still children. They stared back at him with quiet recognition. One of them, the one who had saved Bubblegum, stepped forward within the mirror's depth. "Hey," said the other Finn softly. Finn said nothing. He just watched.
"You're the one who never saved her," the reflection continued, his tone kind, almost reverent. "And yet—"
"Somehow you're still here." Finn nodded slowly.
"I guess I am. Do you regret it?" asked the reflection.
He hesitated. The word felt too small to hold the truth. "Sometimes, but
"I think it's not about saving her anymore."
maybe it's about understanding why I wanted to." The mirrored Finn smiled. "That's the part most heroes never learn." And with that, the reflection began to fade, leaving behind a faint melody, gentle, haunting, endlessly incomplete. It was the same song again, the one that never came to be. But now Finn could hear its meaning. It wasn't about victory or love, it was about presence, about the fragile beauty of moments that could have been, and how even unreal things leave footprints on the soul. He sat beside the lake, the grass cool beneath his fingers. The silence was alive here. Every breath felt sacred. He thought of Bubblegum, not the princess, not the scientist, but the person beneath all that. The one who laughed softly at his jokes, who stood at her window late at night thinking of worlds she could build. Maybe in another world he had saved her. Maybe she had smiled at him and said thank you. Maybe they had shared a long moment in the moonlight, and that was enough. But here, in this world, she was only a memory of a dream. And still she was beautiful. He realized then that he didn't need to save her. He never had. What she needed and what he needed was to be seen, to be known, to be part of a world that allowed them both to simply exist, free from expectation. He smiled faintly. "Maybe saving someone isn't about changing their story," he whispered. "Maybe it's just about remembering it." The wind stirred again, and this time it carried warmth. The song that never was began to hum faintly around him, as if approving. Paul's time drifted like mist.
Hours or centuries might have passed.
When Finn finally rose, he saw the first faint threads of golden light spreading through the silver grass. He knew then that he was close to waking, or perhaps close to ending. The dream was folding inward, and with it all the echoes of what could have been. He felt no fear, only calm. In the distance, he saw the silhouette of Jake beneath a glowing tree. The same from their earliest adventures, its roots sunk deep into the story of everything. Jake waved lazily.
"You finally found it, huh?"
"The song?" Jake grinned. "Yeah, man. The one that's been humming through everything. It's not about saving. It's about being. You always overthought it." Finn laughed quietly. "Yeah, maybe I did." Jake tilted his head. "So what now?" Finn looked toward the horizon where sky and dream blended into one endless dawn.
"I think—"
"I just listen," Jake nodded. "Then you're finally ready." As he stepped toward his old friend, Finn could feel the song swelling, not in his ears, but in his heart. Every memory, every silence, every what-if began to resolve into a single chord, pure and luminous. It wasn't a conclusion, it was a continuation, an understanding. He was part of something eternal, where every choice, every missed chance, every saved and unsaved life became one vast harmony. Pause. As the music grew, the world began to blur. The grass dissolved into light. The lake shimmered and vanished. Even Jake began to fade, smiling until he was just a memory of warmth. Finn felt himself becoming light too, like a note released into the air, finally free from gravity and regret. And then he heard her voice, soft, distant, carried on the wind. Bubblegum. She wasn't calling for help. She wasn't crying. She was singing. Her voice blended with the melody, completing it, closing the loop. Finn realized with a quiet joy that even in this world where he never saved her, she had still found her song. And somehow that meant he had too. The last thing he saw was the golden dawn blooming fully, spilling across the horizon like a promise fulfilled. And the last thing he felt was peace, pure and boundless, like falling into the arms of the universe itself was. He drifted on the edge of waking. The world around him pulsed softly, heartbeat to heartbeat, as if inviting him to rest. He thought of everything he'd seen, everything he hadn't, of the versions of himself still wandering through other dreams, of Jake's laughter, of Bubblegum's quiet resilience,
Of the small, beautiful ache of being alive. And somewhere, just beyond thought, the song continued.
not as something lost, but as something eternal, a melody without beginning or end, sung softly by the stars themselves. The world had become soundless, not silent exactly, just softer, as if everything were wrapped in a slow, tender hush. The sky above Finn shimmered like silk, woven from moonlight, and beneath his feet the ground was no longer grass but memory, fluid and pale as dawnlight. He took a breath, though even the act of breathing felt less physical now, more like an echo of a habit once cherished by his body. Pause. He was not sure if he still had a body. He was not sure if it mattered. All around him the air glowed faintly, and time seemed to slow until it became indistinguishable from stillness. This was not the Ooo he knew, nor the dreamscape he had wandered through. It was something gentler, something that existed between endings and beginnings, the quiet seam of the universe where all things come to rest before being reborn. Finn stood at the edge of a vast golden field. It stretched endlessly in every direction, rippling in slow, eternal waves. The light that touched it was neither from the sun nor moon. It seemed to emanate from the field itself, each blade of luminous grass humming faintly with life. It was warm here, but not hot, bright but not blinding. Everything felt perfectly balanced, and for the first time Finn felt no need to move forward or look back. He whispered to the horizon, "Is this it? Is this where it all ends?" A soft wind stirred the golden blades. They swayed gently as if nodding in answer. Pause. He began to walk through the field, his steps leaving trails of light behind him. Each one lingered for a moment before fading back into gold. As he walked, fragments of the world he once knew began to float gently through the air. Images like glass bubbles of memory. He saw the tree fort, its branches waving in the twilight. He saw Marceline strumming her bass, smiling faintly under the stars. He saw BMO humming to itself, its eyes glowing a soft blue. And he saw Bubblegum in her laboratory, the light from her experiments painting her face with pink fire. Each vision drifted past him and dissolved into mist. But unlike before, Finn didn't feel lost. He felt gratitude, like these were gifts given back to him before the long sleep. He reached out once, his fingers brushing a memory of Jake laughing beside him. The bubble shimmered and burst, releasing a gentle warmth that passed through him like sunlight through water. "Thanks, buddy," Finn whispered, his voice trembling with something close to joy. "You were always the best part of the story." There was a hill in the distance, taller than the others, crowned by a single silver tree. Its leaves glowed like starlight. The wind carried a sound toward him, the faint hum of that same eternal song he had heard in the last chapter of his dream, the song that never was. Now, though, it felt complete. As he climbed the hill, the melody grew richer. Each note seemed to contain 1,000 worlds, all whispering together in harmony, the laughter of friends, the sigh of oceans, the quiet moments between battles. Every sound was part of something infinite and kind. When he reached the top, he saw that the silver tree was blooming, not with flowers, but with light. Tiny spheres hung from its branches, and within each one a moment shimmered, a story, a memory, a universe. He stepped closer.
One orb pulsed softly and opened before him.
Inside, he saw himself as a boy again, barefoot, wild-eyed, chasing the wind through the grasslands, shouting to the sky for no reason other than to hear his own voice echo back. That version of him laughed endlessly, unburdened by destiny or fear. Finn smiled. "Hey, kid." The boy looked up from his play and grinned.
Hey, future me.
"Did we do it?" Finn hesitated. "Do what?" "Save everyone!" He looked into the child's bright eyes and felt something inside him loosen, like a knot untying. "Not everyone," Finn said softly.
But maybe...
"That was never the point." The boy tilted his head. "And what was the point?" Finn smiled faintly. "To live, to love, to try." The child seemed to understand. He nodded once, then dissolved into a swirl of light, joining the other glowing memories in the branches, oars. The next orb opened on its own. Inside it was a moment that had never been. Bubblegum and Finn sitting side by side at the top of the Candy Kingdom walls, the city below glittering in peace. She was older here, and so was he. They weren't lovers, not really. Just two souls who had grown up and grown kind. She was leaning her head on his shoulder, smiling faintly. Finn reached out and touched the light. It felt warm, like forgiveness. He whispered, "I never saved you, Bonnie."
But you saved yourself.
"And maybe that's better." The image rippled once, as if acknowledging him, and then it too faded into the air. He stood beneath the silver tree, and for a moment he simply breathed. The world around him pulsed gently, almost like it was breathing with him. The melody filled the air now, clear and whole, a lullaby woven from everything that had ever been. And then he heard another sound, footsteps. He turned, and there was Jake, radiant and relaxed, his form made of soft golden light. He wasn't a ghost or a vision this time. He was simply there. "Yo," Jake said, smiling like the sun. "You made it." Finn laughed softly, a tear slipping down his cheek. "Yeah, man, I think I did." Jake nodded toward the horizon.
Beautiful, ain't it?
Finn followed his gaze. Beyond the golden fields, beyond the soft silver air, there was a vast expanse of stars rising, infinite and gentle.
It's perfect, Finn whispered.
"Feels like the end of everything." Jake grinned. "Nah, not the end. Just a nap before the next big thing." Pause. The two friends sat beneath the silver tree. The branches whispered above them, shedding faint glimmers of light that fell like feathers. They didn't speak for a while. They didn't need to.
After a long silence, Finn asked Jake,
"Do you think any of this was real?" Jake tilted his head thoughtfully. "Real's just a word we made up to feel less small."
"I think everything you feel is real enough, man. That's all that matters." Finn nodded slowly.
"So, even the worlds that never happened?" Jake shrugged with a grin. "Especially those." They both laughed quietly, and the sound rippled across the field like a wave of light. The world began to dim, not in a sad way, but in the way a candle softens before sleep. The horizon shimmered, folding into itself, and Finn knew this was it. The last breath before the next dream. He looked at Jake, who was smiling at him the way he always had, steady, warm, endlessly patient. "Guess it's time," Finn said. "Yes, it is," Jake replied. "You ready?" Finn looked out one last time at the endless golden expanse, at the light drifting in slow motion through the air.
"Yeah," he said softly. "I'm ready." Jake reached out his paw and Finn took it.
The song began to rise again, now vast, infinite, cosmic. It wasn't coming from the world anymore. It was coming from them. From every choice, every laugh, every tear, every dream they'd ever had. They were the melody. They always had been. As the final notes filled the sky, the golden field began to dissolve into light. The silver tree shimmered, its branches turning transparent, releasing its glowing orbs into the heavens. Each orb rose slowly, drifting upward until they became stars. Finn and Jake stood together, watching the sky become a new night filled with all their memories. Each star a story, each story a life. Finn turned to Jake. "So this is the gentle end of all things?" Jake smiled, his eyes half closed.
Nah, bro.
"This is the start of peace." The world began to fade into whiteness. Not emptiness, just quiet fullness. Finn could feel himself dissolving into it, his form turning to song, to starlight, to calm. He could hear Bubblegum's voice again in the distance, and Marceline's laugh, and BMO's tiny hums. He could hear the whispers of all the versions of himself he had met, all singing the same soft refrain. He didn't need to understand the words. He only needed to feel them. The song was home. Pause. He closed his eyes and let go. The last thing he felt was Jake's paw squeezing his hand, steady and sure. Then, at last, everything was light.
And the light was love. When the field was gone, when time had folded itself into silence, something lingered still. A hum, soft and infinite.
It was the echo of everything, the dream and the dreamer, the saved and the unsaved, the endings and the beginnings. And within that hum, somewhere, Finn's voice whispered gently to whoever might still be listening. "Don't worry about what didn't happen.
Every story, every missed chance, every quiet moment.
They all belong to the same melody. You're part of it too. Always have been." Then the voice faded into warmth, into breath, into sleep. Pause. The song that never was became the song that always is, and all things at last were still.